Despite its ancient outback desert landscapes and vibrant Aboriginal culture, Australia's Northern Territory has a problem. A violent crime problem. For example, on the Territory's police newsroom website, there's multiple daily reports of violence. Assault in Nightcliff, an aggravated burglary in Alice Springs, and an aggravated assault in the Roper Gulf region. And that was just in a 2-hour period on the 14th of July. I certainly don't envy the police. It should be noted that despite its large geographical area, the Northern Territory holds less than 1% of Australia's total population, so it certainly punches above its weight when it comes to violent crime. But the focus of this video is on the Territory's domestic violence problem. For example, on 13th of July, arrest domestic violence Coconut Grove. This one I found particularly memorable from 10th of July. Arrest domestic violence Darwin CBD. In the report they state, about 11:50 p.m, police received reports of a female being assaulted by a male. Darwin General Duties officers attended and the male fled by foot before climbing up a tree about 12 metres high on the Esplanade. The offender allegedly threw sticks at the officers while up in the tree. I know it's not funny, and DV is certainly a serious issue, but I honestly laughed out loud when I read that. The fact the offender thought he could evade police by climbing a tree. The fact that they gave the height of the tree in metres. The fact that he sat up there throwing sticks at the police. I guess I just have a dark sense of humour. But it is a stark reminder of the unpredictable and often challenging situations police face when responding to domestic violence in the Territory. But a news article from the ABC gave some interesting statistics, thanks to a viewer for highlighting this. We are at crisis point, NT's domestic violence sector turning hundreds away. In the article, they note that the Northern Territory has the highest rates of family and domestic violence in Australia. They state, the Northern Territory's family and domestic violence sector is at crisis point, with one service turning away up to 200 women every month. Many of the women turned away have been assessed as being at a serious risk of harm or death. Interestingly, they state the ethnicity statistics. Dawn House Chief Executive said there was a diverse clientele. 60% are First Nations, 20% identify with an Asian background, and 20% are Caucasian or other, proving domestic and family violence does not discriminate. They seem to have missed out an entire continent of people, Africa, but I'll presume Caucasian or other includes African people, unless there are no African people living in the entire Northern Territory. I'll place all this data in a pie chart. If we put beside it the percentage of Aboriginal people in each state and territory, we can see that the Northern Territory has the highest percentage of Aboriginal people at around 30.3%. So if the ABC data is correct, then First Nations people at 60% of domestic violence clientele are overrepresented by about double. That is, we'd expect only 30% of the clients to be First Nations, not 60%. As mentioned earlier in the article, we can turn away up to 200 women that reach out for support per month at Dawn House. If we go by the given statistics, that means approximately 120 First Nations women, 40 Asian and 40 Caucasian or other women are being turned away every month. In typical ABC fashion, a pattern I've observed in previous videos, they often describe Aboriginal people using phrases like, a proud Aboriginal woman. I'm not sure why they feel they have to always throw proud in there, but it seems to be a common practice. As we saw in the statistics earlier, they also point out that there are barriers for First Nations women who are disproportionately impacted by family and domestic violence. Interestingly, in this entire article, they mention nothing about gendered violence, although they do mention men's behaviour change programs. That seems to be a common theme in Australia of late, the implication that something is inherently wrong with men, so we need to change their behaviour. In other articles, especially ones where they don't specifically mention Aboriginal people, gendered violence seems to be the first word that comes out of their mouths. For example, from May, calls for education shake-up to tackle gendered violence. Or this one from June about masculinity. They found that men who subscribed to macho stereotypes were 17 times more likely to commit gendered violence. But in this one about domestic violence in the NT, not a peep. Regardless of the terminology used, the undeniable truth remains. The Northern Territory is at a crisis point, not just with domestic violence, but with violence in general.